Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, everybody. Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today are Dr. Bill Wagner, co-founder and chief operating officer of Associated Veterinary Partners, and Tedd Trabert, director of people and success. And today we are going to learn about AVP and how their proudly non-private equity controlled model blends the best of both worlds, where independent and corporate ownership bring resources and support to their partner practices while preserving their local culture, values, and medical autonomy. So Dr. Bill and Tedd, thank you for being here with us today. I'm really excited to have you on and to have our audience hear your story, which I really enjoyed when I met you. And I wanted to start off with you, Bill. If we could just go back in time, more of the origin story of how you arrived here today with AVP.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. So I am always very upfront. This is not what I originally set out to do in veterinary medicine. There were a couple twists and turns that took me here. I enjoy what I do now. I'm glad I'm doing it. It's a way to have a lot of impact in my role, but definitely not what was plan A as I decided to become a vet. I started vet med as a technician, so I worked as a tech for 3 years in between undergrad and vet school, and really wanted to make sure that I was, making the right choice to commit to 4 more years of higher education and making sure that, that it's easy to be passionate about vet med, but I wanted to make sure I lived it for a bit and really was sure that that was what I wanted to dedicate my career to, and did decide that it was something that I was every day working in the clinic. I just felt more and more in love with the work. So decided to continue on with my education, graduated from Tufts Vet Med in 2016. So I'm still clinging to the fact that I think I can still call myself a newer vintage of vet. The number keeps running away from me each year, but it's something that, makes me, I think, in a lot of ways different than some of the other leaders of vet groups out there, both by being a veterinarian, because there are several vet groups out there who don't have vets in senior leadership, which is something that we're very passionate about. But also, I think it's maybe a bit of a different perspective, just being of a different generation than maybe some of the vets who are in leadership of some of the larger groups. But came out of vet school on a very traditional path, took a small animal GP position in northern New Jersey, near where I grew up. Worked there for just shy of 5 years. Fantastic job, great mentorship, kind of all the things that you want out of your first job out of vet school. But where things started to kind of take a left turn for me career-wise was about 3 years into my 5 years working at that practice. They went through a transition of ownership from being independently owned to being purchased by a relatively traditional corporate group. And like many in our profession, I didn't have a perfect experience with that transition of ownership. There were a mix of changes that happened at the practice, some for the better, some not for the better. And it was a bit of an eye-opening experience for me in terms of, what this meant for the profession and just kind of a wider level of, I'd always known that corporate veterinary medicine existed, but it was something I'd never experienced firsthand before in my career. And B, it also, had some implications for me personally, both in terms of the job that I was at, but also my own personal plans of I had intended to go in the direction of becoming a practice owner, probably, 5 to 10 years into my career. And I started to worry about what this meant in terms of the competitive landscape of what it meant to be an independent practice owner in a time of consolidation within veterinary medicine, what it meant to try and buy a practice, what it meant to try and start a practice, of had a a lot of concerns that were starting to crop up and kind of what I thought was a neatly laid plan out for my career. I guess the universe knew that I was at a fork in the road of trying to figure out what was next, because I got a call out of the blue from my former college roommate who called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this buddy, Dimitri, a really good guy. He works in investment banking and private equity in the city. We volunteer at the same nonprofit in the city together. And I think it would be great for you guys to connect. He's looking to talk to a veterinarian, and he's got some ideas." And so I agreed to take a phone call with Dimitri. Just sort of thought this was going to be a one-off, half an hour of my time, give him some advice about vet med and send him off on his merry way. Dimitri ended up being my co-founder at AVP, so it was clearly not just one conversation that ended up happening. Dimitri, even though we came to kind of the same place from very different directions, we very much were seeing the world in the same way when it came to veterinary medicine. He was working for a large private equity firm that, like many large private equity firms, was very interested in the idea of investing in veterinary corporations. So they put him in charge of looking at a few different veterinary corporations for potential investment for the firm that he was working for. And he was kind of surprised by what he is seeing. These consolidation companies look different than some of the other consolidation companies that he'd looked at in other industries. Particularly, he felt that they were growing far too quickly, that their pace of growth was aggressive to a point of, he felt, being irresponsible. And also that they were struggling mightily with turnover, that they were really not retaining people at the clinical level well, that within 6 to 12 months of acquiring a veterinary practice, that they were seeing a large attrition of the existing workforce, which is a very big problem. Both it's a financial problem of the job market is challenging in veterinary medicine, like many industries, even more so in vet med, but also that it was reflective that there were some deep mismatches of culture and values between these large corporations and the clinics that they were acquiring, because people don't quit their job for no reason. People don't want to quit their jobs unless they're unhappy. And these were people who in many cases were very long tenured, 10 plus year tenure at the practices that they were at. So clearly there was a change that was occurring that they were unhappy with. So that kind of, sparked the entrepreneurial part of Dimitri's brain. He looked at that and said, "Hey, it seems like there's a lot of veterinary corporations, but they seem to be struggling consistently with the same problems, that they're maybe not, nobody seems to be thinking outside the box." And that's kind of a stance that we've revised a bit. If we don't think that we have a monopoly of having our heads screwed on straight, there are some other vet groups out there that we've come across over the last few years that we think really are thinking in a much more progressive and people-centered way than some of the maybe older, more established groups out there. So I think we've taken a more balanced approach as we've gone of not everybody is kind of thinking within that mold, but certainly the bulk of the groups out there we feel are generally thinking in a very similar way to each other. So that was kind of the opportunity, so to speak, because every entrepreneurial story has to have a opportunity of kind of what is the problem that we're solving. And that really was the big thing, was this mismatch of culture and values that we felt that most people within the profession, certainly practice owners, don't wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I want to sell to one of these huge groups, this business that I poured so many years of my life into, and so much blood, sweat, and tears, and relationships with the community, relationships with their team, relationships with their clients." These are all things that are very important to them, and they want to make sure are being treated well beyond their retirement. So certainly the veterinary teams out there, we were seeing it with the turnover issues with these large groups, that there was certainly a mismatch there. So we quit our jobs in late 2020, which was a very interesting time to be voluntarily unemployed. Unfortunately, it's worked out. But we welcomed our first partner clinic in October of 2021. So we are currently partnered with 16 partner practices around the U.S. in 12 states. And we're feeling very fortunately validated in what we're doing. The feedback that we've been getting both from our partner clinics and externally from people who kind of been hearing our story has been very positive. You'll notice about a year gap between when we decided, Dimitri and I decided, hey, let's go out and do this, and when we actually started operating clinics. That was very much by design of, we really wanted to sit down and build a thesis that was going to be different, because it's all well and good to sit there and say, hey, we want to be different. We think the other guys are not as good as they could be. If it was that simple, they would all be doing better. I believe nobody aspires to not be good at what they do. Usually there's some underlying reasons, there's some underlying challenges that create the scenario. And I think that was what we really sat down and spent that year trying to solve. And the big word that we kept circling back to was partnership. This idea of a very genuine co-ownership model where ownership is held at the local level. A lot of decision-making autonomy, culture carrying happens at the local level. And we feel that there's a lot of power in that there's a reason why companies want to invest in veterinary clinics. These are generally very special small businesses that, and when you look at what makes them special, it's the leadership of those practices and, the teams that they're able to build around these exceptional individuals. And in our eyes, the worst thing that you can do is take the exceptional leadership at the practice and disempower them, turn owners into employees. And then in particular, if you turn them into employees and don't treat them well as employees, then you've really created a double whammy of subtracting value through that process. So we see this in the other direction of how can we build up local leadership, empower them to be supported so that they've got resources behind them now, but continue to serve their patients, their clients, and their team in the way that they really feel passionate about. During that time as well, I think it was maybe June or July of 21, we welcomed two members of our leadership team, one right before the other, which he is very proud of being. The first hired AVP was, we added Tedd to our team, as well as Cody Waldrop, our practice management officer. But with that, I guess I'll kick it over to Tedd to introduce himself, because I realize I've rambled for a bit.
All worth it, Bill. All I can sit and listen to. So as Bill said, and as you said, Crystal, my name is Tedd Trabert. I'm the Director of People and Success. Proudly, I always tell any individuals that I'm talking to that I found my passion very early. I've been doing, human resources for about 30 years. When I found my purpose when I joined the veterinary community. I have been in multi-state, multi-location organizations my entire career, U.S. Airways, Continental, the Home Depot. And so I've gravitated to this uniqueness of holding a local culture and honoring it while enforcing the fact that they're part of a winning team, the larger winning team. And that's what we do at Associated Veterinary Partners. We honor the culture of the community that they've built locally, and they just understand that whenever they need us, they've got a whole team at the Success Center backing them. And that's simply put, my title says it all, Bill, and to make sure you let me, I always say www.createajob.com. I became the Director of People and Success because my team focuses on the people, team members, and their success. And whatever that kind of construct is built, whether it be talent acquisition, total compensation, whatever those traditional words are, we really just have made it palatable for today's workforce. We're dealing with a very young workforce in veterinary med, mixed with more traditional, longstanding employees as medical directors and associate veterinarians. And that's interesting, bringing those two worlds together as we grow. And Bill, Bill was very humble in saying what we're doing for the community. I always say we're giving options to the veterinary community for those new grads coming out that, lots of student debt, lots of financial burden, want to be entrepreneurial, but because of large corporations can't, we give them an option. Associate veterinarians looking for a pathway to retirement, and struggling because of also that consolidation in the marketplace, we're giving them an option. And I'm very proud of that. So, we can hop onto some examples, I guess.
Yeah, let's do that. I was going to ask you all, often when I work with companies that are joining a group, they experience that the difficulty of the onboarding of something new. Can you walk us through that? Because I know that creates a lot of apprehension. All humans dislike change, even if it's change for the better. So can we just start there of painting the picture of what it's like when you do start to partner and how you make that transition as comfortable as possible?
Yeah, maybe I'll lead off with the, I guess, pre-closing portion of that, because part of it is kind of the mergers and acquisitions process of setting things up for success. And then maybe I'll hand off to Ted for kind of what happens at and after closing. So one of the big differences that we have really starts with when we're assessing partnership fit. Consolidation companies are really have two core business models. They're mergers and acquisitions companies, so they go out and buy either entirely or interest in companies. They're also operations companies. And that second area where I think a lot of the traditional veterinary consolidators have maybe fallen a little short in their commitments is that they've seen themselves first and foremost as mergers and acquisitions companies and less as operations companies. We see it in reverse of, we are a company that operates veterinary hospitals that also happens to acquire interest in veterinary hospitals and thinking of it in that sense. But on the mergers and acquisitions side, that is where we start down the path to hopefully a very successful relationship with our partners in selecting the right partners and the right practices to work with in the first place. Because I always default, folks get a kick out of this when I'm on intro calls with them I don't have to like you to buy something from you, but I do need to like you in order for us to work together as partners. That's a big part of what makes partnership different is that, we are embarking on, particularly with our selling partners, folks who are seeing this as a eventual path to retirement. This is different than some of the other options that they have in front of them, which are more of a traditional sale where it's truly a transaction. There might be a work commitment for a few years that's associated with that. But at the end of the day, their relationship with the buyer is strictly that of a seller and a buyer. We have this chapter of partnership that sits in between those transactional elements of it. And that is where, having this cultural fit becomes so important. We do say no relatively often to opportunities for a lot of reasons, but one of those is a mismatch of culture and goals. If somebody's looking for a truly transactional relationship, we're probably not the right fit for them. Fortunately, they're going to have lots of options in the market because there are a lot of very transactional buyers available. But for the folks who are truly looking for that relationship, that partnership, those are green flags for us in terms of what is going to be a successful relationship because the folks who are more culture driven, more values driven, those tend to be the right fit for us as partners. And that also trickles down to there's an extremely strong correlation between strong leaders, cultural leaders, and strong teams, cultural teams, that they build like minds around them. And if you've got a good leader that's at the practice level, typically there's a good team that's working with them and following them. So we do a lot of that assessment up front. We meet the teams a lot earlier than many other groups. Often groups will say, hey, we meet the team on the day that we close. We don't feel that that's the right approach. We're typically a few weeks ahead of closing or meeting with the team, walking them through what's going on so that they're participants in the process instead of bystanders. And I think that there's a lot of psychological impact to that of, hey, they respected me enough to tell me ahead of time that this is happening and to get my input to have these tough conversations of what does this mean for me personally, so that it changes the whole conversation around it. And Ted and I go out for those conversations together in person. That's just a very different feel to many other groups, where there's probably maybe a regional operations director or something like that who's coming out and having those conversations. We feel it's a different feel for our group to have two members of senior leadership there, having those conversations. And I guess I'll kick it off to Ted to sort of talk about what happens at that conversation beyond, because that's really where then the people and success department starts carrying the torch in terms of our relationships.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think, it's interesting. Bill Bill has mastered the pre-close portion with our on our acquisition side. I think post-close, my team looked at, what are the effects of changing someone or asking someone to enter into a partnership when they've been a sole proprietor for so many years. And I think that's where we differentiate ourselves. We look at how do we help them find their voice. And coincidentally, this is what we also talk about with the local leadership. We're not here to replace you. We are not here to mandate every daily action or decision that you're making. We help you find your voice. A lot of the talent in the veterinary space right now, aside from the associate veterinarians or the veterinarians in the market, they are kind of homegrown. They've got some certifications, but on-the-job training is probably priority number one with a lot of the team members, and we honor that. What we look at is reinforcing and like I said, helping them find their voice. So it's the same with the new partners. We help them find their voice. Where they were making all the decisions at one time, now they have an entire success center to bounce ideas off of, kind of gain that confidence to make those decisions locally. And when we do, we've had a lot of trial and error. We look at the decisions on a partnership basis. We give our recommendations. If a local leadership decides to go their own route, we support them. We put a pin in it. We revisit to look at the results and kindly remind them, hey, this is a great outcome. This outcome could have been different. How can we change that? But again, it's all supportive. And I think that's the key differentiator, is that we're not here to change anyone. We're here to optimize. We're here to support and be part of that winning team, like I said earlier.
I'm just imagining from the conversations I've had with those who have been acquired, it almost feels like you're doing a 180. You allow them to have autonomy, which humans love to have. And I imagine that for many that are in a position of being acquired, they might feel tired. Like, I just need help. I've been doing this for a long time. I sure could use some support. And you're like, hey, we're here to support you. We really want to be additive, not to take away. And I am also imagining that this may be protective from a turnover standpoint, since we see a lot of turnover often during acquisitions. Can you speak to that, like what you're seeing in your model when it comes to retention?
Yeah, and it's something that we're very proud of. So I believe at this point we're at either 2 or 3 full-time clinicians who have left the network across 2.5 years of operations. So turnover is basically, or retention is sitting like 99%, something like that. I know at least 2 were due to medical reasons, so not due to us. So it's been something that we take a lot of pride in. Part of that is ownership of, I think, probably about 40 or 50% of the veterinarians within the network have ownership in their practices. So that includes both, the selling clinicians as well as associate veterinarians who have become owners through this process, which is something that we take a lot of pride in, of facilitating these buy-ins or earn-ins for associate veterinarians to have this multi-generational ownership and multi-generational leadership. And certainly ownership is a great way to establish long-term retention in a positive way, of saying, hey, we're creating a great financial opportunity for you with this practice, and we'd love for you to be a long-term player of, becoming a future leader at the practice. And that's something that, when we talk about retention across vet med, there's a lot of negative mechanisms. There's these, signing bonuses with really awful clawback clauses. There's non-compete agreements, which fortunately seem to be on their way out. There's just a lot of these ways to try and just grab somebody and hold them. And that's obviously not a recipe for success. That, people can and should have their freedom to change their jobs as they please. And that, really, if you want retention, you need to create a good environment. So I guess with that, I'll pass it off to Ted. I'm using a lot of royal weeds. This really is.
Yeah, there it is. You're singing my song, Val. You're singing my song. And it's interesting. Bill and Dimitri and I, we kind of fall on the spectrum. And Bill stands kind of in the middle, where Dimitri, our CEO, on one side and I'm on the other. Obviously Dimitri's the more fiscally minded. He's there to ensure that, no margin, no mission. He's ensuring that we have longevity and market share. And I'm on the other side, with the, one would say touchy-feely, but it really is the more etherical. And Bill proudly, I say, stands in the middle there and kind of is our equalizer, as like a valve as our ideas flow back and forth. And I think that's indicative really of the way we look at our practices and our partnerships. It really is about finding the best fit individually with a local partner. And when we do that, and Bill's absolutely right. I want to support him in the fact that you're free to move on. You're free to find out whatever passion your career takes you in a way. We're going to make it really hard a decision to make, because we're going to make it so darn great to work for us that you're really going to have a hard decision. And I think that's been the recipe for success. And it's also, on the conversely speaking, it's really been a great opportunity on the talent acquisition side, telling our story. We have a phenomenal talent. I call our talent acquisition guru and a sourcer on my team. And all they do is tell the AVP story, and it gravitates and resonates with so many of the new associates, so many with the legacy team members, because of what's been happening in the marketplace. They see the opportunity that AVP has. And so you mix that with our low turnover, and we've got a recipe for success. Now, it's maintaining that now is the bar, right? Crystal, it's the bar. But I have no doubt in my mind, I would say the people at the Success Center, I'm just having the time of my life. I tell people this, I'm having the time of my life because we're making people's, I listen, very cliche, people's dreams come true. We're also making a great culture and workplace at the individual locations, which is no easy task for people to kind of embrace. Because right now, as you know, Crystal, the market for recruiting there's a high bar. People are moving. Salaries are volatile. We're seeing salaries higher than we've ever seen in this market, in these labor markets. And right now, it's about showing people that the culture is more important sometimes than a paycheck, because $1 more an hour seems like $1 more an hour. But what are you getting with that? And Bill touched on it earlier, and I have to go back and say the backlash with sign-on bonuses, they're very enticing, but we urge people, understand what you're there for. There's a specific population that will still continue to want a sign-on bonus because they've got different aspirational goals. That's okay. We have the options for others.
Right. And I think it's also from those who may have already had those experiences, and they now know the consequences, and they're looking for something different. But sadly, the experience of life is a good teacher. And when we have to sometimes go through those hard knocks to really appreciate something different, we don't know what we don't know. I'd really like to dive into some examples. I think that we could paint the picture for those listening. If you want to share some stories of partnerships that you are currently engaged in to give us a fuller picture. Yeah, let's go with 2 examples, if that's okay.
Right. Crystal knows he's in our short time together, Bill. She knows that no one's ever accused us of under communicating. I think mine are more generalized because I don't want to get too specific with practices unless I have their consent. But we're seeing a lot of success. And Crystal, you talked about this earlier. There is a segment of the partnerships. They're kind of exhausted. Our partners are kind of exhausted. Being solo owners, running your own business, very entrepreneurial, especially in this ever competing market. We're seeing individuals that haven't taken PTO or vacations or had that work-life integration. I always say there's never a balance. So aspirational for me is it's work-life integration, where we manage both our work life and our personal life. I think my successes run with finding additional team members. Our recruiting efforts have had a spectacular response. with our partners. It's become a full-time job nowadays. So the medical directors and partners know that it's great to have the success center there, getting up every morning and going to bed every night, focusing on that. And that's kind of the key. Number one is giving them relief, not relief sets. Relief is in their days, in their weeks, and just that ability to take a breath and focus on good medicine. That's one of our tenets, is focusing on good medicine. I think my second win, collectively, is really focusing on leadership, the local practices, and giving people the opportunity to, whether it's their CVPM, whether it's their vet tech license, a variety. The industry is not scarce with certifications. The ability to do so, to help provide them with financial assistance, guidance. Our operational department, again, is fantastic when it comes to helping the local teams find a voice. So again, I'm just going to focus on giving that owner that mentality where they can now breathe, be a part of the legacy, but then also have a pathway to retirement. And then also just that finding the voice and investing in leadership are my two wins. Bill, I hope I didn't steal your thunder. But those are what I get up every morning and go to bed every night very proud of for people in success.
Yep. And you covered ones that I was thinking of. There's one additional one that particularly I am very passionate about and is really one of the things that I'm very proud of in terms of what we've done at AVP, which is the path to ownership for folks who are not originally owners in their practices. It's typically been associate veterinarians. Recently, we had a practice manager also become a partner at the clinic that they're working at. And it's just been really cool to see just the shift in energy, the shift in attitude of these individuals who, were already passionate about the clinics that they were at. That's one of the things that we look at when we're assessing somebody for an equity opportunity. But just seeing how that has reinvigorated them to now see themselves truly as leaders at the practice, being the future culture carriers, because very often these situations are that there is a selling partner who is looking to retire in the next few years, and that is, creating a clear path for them to step up, as whether it's, a medical director role or, whatever that leadership looks like at that particular practice. So that's just been something that, as an entrepreneur myself, has just been really fun to see. Because I do think that there is a generation of young vets who feel a little bit like the ladder got pulled up behind them. I hear from some veterinarians out there, hey, the young folks don't want to be owners. They, don't have that entrepreneurial drive. And I do strongly disagree with that opinion. I do think that there is still the same entrepreneurial spirit within the profession as there's always been. Just the risk reward calculus around going into ownership in the current environment, particularly with where student loan debt sits. It's a lot harder to make a leap of faith when you've got an anchor. So these are all things that, I think that the entrepreneurial spirit is out there strong. When I talk to young veterinarians, it just takes constructing the right opportunity for them to make that risk reward make sense. So we've been able to do that to kind of lower the bar, make it easier for them to consider ownership, both in terms of the support that they're getting at the practice from our team and financially of just creating financing opportunities and so forth that make it accessible to them financially. So that's something that's been really exciting.
That's very unique too. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll add. I mean, Bill's absolutely right. I want to add, very early on, we started saying a phrase, and we started saying, love what you do again, join AVP. And I think now that we've, kind of been in this for going on our fourth year in July and have acquisitions, and it really does mean something to me when I say, love what you do again, join AVP, because I hear it from a wide variety of positions of our team members, where they come to us afterwards and say, there's just a new energy at the practice. There's a new positive flow. whether it's a medical director or a practice manager, because there's time and energy put in. And I don't want to, we talked a lot about people and success today, but the ops team goes in and they assess the physical environment. And we build a pathway to change the physical environment and update it. Many times, a lot of our medical directors or our staff try to get in this, rut where they're just focusing on medicine, and the surrounding environment tends to not get the love that it needs over the years. So the ops department, although they're not on this call today, does a fantastic job of working with the physical environment. So I just want to put that plug in for them. And also, like I said, just loving what you do again, there's a lot of love out there.
Oh, it's wonderful. For those listening today that might be thinking like, could there be a potential partnership here? What do you look for in the practices you're partnering? Can you give us a little nutshell version of some of the things that are maybe make or break that when it comes to that alignment that you're seeking in order to consider partnership?
Yeah. And in terms of kind of what our prospective partners look like, it's a very wide variety. We are focused on general practice, so we typically are not working with specialty or ER or urgent care practices. That we do see general practice as our focus. We are companion animal predominant, but we actually have several partner clinics who are mixed animal practices. That was something that we partnered with a phenomenal mixed animal practice early on in our journey. It was kind of a bit of another happy accident of we were like, hey, this is not originally the core model that we were looking for, but ended up falling in love with our relationship with that practice that has turned into several more relationships with mixed animal practices along our growth as well. And otherwise, our kind of anchor partners, the partner who is going to be, at least in the first iteration of the partnership, kind of going to be at the center of things with us. We do ask that partner is looking on at least a 3 to 5 year transition commitment. So that often is a point where some folks say, hey, I'm a year or two from retirement, and that ends up not being a fit at that point. But for folks who are thinking a bit more mid and long term in terms of what transition planning looks for them, that ends up being a good fit for us. Otherwise, we are open to all 48 contiguous states. We are unfortunately not looking in Alaska and Hawaii at the moment, but otherwise, folks within the U.S. we're happy to chat. And not to steal Tedd's thunder, but certainly. We are always looking for talented individuals who are looking to join one of our existing partner clinics as well. We have a variety of positions, all the way from practice managers and associate veterinarians to technicians, assistants, receptionists, you name it. We're probably looking for an individual across whatever your particular role within the profession is. So yeah, we'd love to meet more people in the profession who are looking for a change.
Wonderful. And so for those listening that want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to find you?
Yep. So yourvetpartner.com is our website. For there, you can pretty much get down whatever path you're looking with us. There is a contact form for those who are thinking about partnership for their practice, as well as there is for our talent acquisition side. There's ways that you can see what our job openings are and get in touch with our recruiting team to find out more about joining one of our existing practices.
Wonderful. I'll put all of that in the show notes. And to stay, Bill and Tedd, it's been great having you on today. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Crystal. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.